If you watch this channel regularly, you're probably already familiar with my painting. And whilst I'm very comfortable saying that I'm a good painter, I'm sure we can all agree most of what you'll have ever seen from me probably isn't at a competition winning standard, which is why you're going to have to trust me and just bear with me while I explain, because I think I might have cracked the code for how to win painting competitions. And I think the answer is kind of surprising. So, I guess the first question you probably have is why am I, as a commercial painter, even commenting on competitive painting? I mean, they're really very different things, right? And while I'll be the first to admit that staying in my lane has never been my strong suit, the answer to that is actually twofold, and I think it's worth hearing me out on. Because you see, first of all, I have recently decided to enter a painting competition this year for the first time in my adult life. The Miniature Painting Open from Cult of Paint. And whilst my entries are generally among the better pieces I've painted this year, I'll happily admit that none of them were painted with competition in mind. So I don't necessarily expect them to perform well in the competition. However, I was also recently invited to judge a painting competition for Warwickshire gamers in Leamington. And this was a huge eye-opener for me and provided some really great insight into the difference between how I paint and how competitors paint. My co-judges ranged from traditional artists through to hobby painters, and then of course myself offering the perspective of a commercial painter. And with such a rounded panel, there was quite a broad range of different things that we were looking for in order to be impressed. The first thing that struck me is that there were quite a lot of entries for such a small local competition, and the standard was staggeringly high, with probably at least a third of the entries being what I would class as the kind of models I'd expect to find entered in one of the bigger contests, like say Golden Demon. But what was incredibly surprising was that once we started deliberating and looking over those models in detail, we found that there was quite a clear line that could be drawn across them to divide them into two. And as a result, that made shortlisting surprisingly easy. It was very clear to all of us that some entries were obviously made with the intent of being display pieces to impress or indeed to compete, whilst others were, although very nice, quite obviously part of someone's army. A nice part, a well-painted part, but nonetheless, in a lot of cases it was quite clear that the intent wasn't for their piece to be a competition entry. And so I think that brings us to the first big secret of performing well in competitive painting, which is of course intent. Setting out from the start to create a piece that you intend to win with is going to massively increase your chances of at least performing well. As judges, we found it fairly obvious to draw a line separating the pieces that were entered on a chance of maybe doing well and the pieces that were entered with the intention of doing well. Because of this, it was very easy to cut the pool of potential winners pretty much in half straight away. So if you want to do well in competition, you want to make sure you end up on the right side of that cut. And whilst I know firsthand just how tempting it is to just enter your existing pieces into a competition on a hope that they'll do well, I mean, that's literally what I've done for almost every category of my MPO entries. But crafting a piece specifically for that competition is always going to help make the piece shine, because the judges are going to be able to see that intent. The second factor that I think contributes highly to success came to light after the winners had all been announced. After the awards ceremony, quite a few of the entrants came up to me to ask for feedback on their entries. They wanted to know what I thought should be improved for next time. Now, first things first, this is great practice and is absolutely something you should do if you have access to the judges at a competition that you've entered. But it also brought to light something which I hadn't really thought about prior. With so many entries, it wasn't ever going to be possible to directly connect miniatures to faces. So each time I was asked for feedback, I asked to see the miniature again so that I could go over it individually. What stood out to me was that on literally 100% of these occasions, the first thing I pointed out to the entrant was the general cleanliness of the painting. Now, I'm sure it's fairly obvious that in order to do well in a competition, you need to paint cleanly, but it's maybe not always obvious exactly what we mean when we say that. To illustrate this, here's a couple of my miniatures. They're both painted with similar techniques, they're both painted in a similar style, they're even similar minis, but when you pay particular attention to the piece on the right, you can quite clearly see the extra effort. The panels are more clearly separated, the blends have had more time taken over them to ensure smoother rendering, the edges are all crisper and cleaner. When there's so many miniatures to choose from by so many talented painters, having the crispest, cleanest, tidiest mini on the table is really going to do a lot to work toward getting your model noticed in that crowd. And ultimately, if we combine these two tips together, that's kind of what we're left with, isn't it? As a competition painter, you need to understand that your piece isn't going to be viewed on its own, at least not initially. Whether it's on an open table or in lit cabinets, most people's first impression of your piece will probably come from it being seen alongside lots of other entries. You need to have deliberate, planned, well-executed design which intentionally separates your piece from those around it. We see amazing examples of this being done in Golden Demon, using conversion or basing, or even model selection. But great painting has to back this up in order to catch the judge's eye for them to say, that's a piece I want to look at a little more closely. As for the event itself, I'd actually like to pivot direction and talk about this briefly if you'll allow me, because it was actually really special. The atmosphere was super friendly, with lots of mingling. Everywhere I went, I heard passionate hobbyists talking about painting and having a great time. It was so nice to just feel surrounded by people who are kind of like me, who care deeply for painting and improving one's craft as a painter. The event was also catered by a really good street food vendor who had halloumi fries. And this is how you win me over. I love halloumi fries. There was beer and soft drinks available all night, and the atmosphere was really chill, super welcoming, and comfortably social without being overloading. But even after all of those positives, I can't finish this video without also taking a little time to celebrate the winners. There were 4 categories for the event, which were Single Mini, Squad, Large Mini, and Best New Painter, with a trophy for first place in each, and an honourable mention for second and third place. So I want to take a minute now to celebrate the top 3 for each of those categories with a little montage. If you like slick painting, strap in, cause it's about to get tasty. It was so cool to be invited to this event celebrating the artistry of the members of a local club. The standard was really high and lots of deliberation was needed to reach a consensus on the winners. But also, it was just really cool to be able to talk shop all night and discuss the finer points of mini painting. I cannot recommend enough just getting yourself out to a local painting competition, putting an entry in and giving it a try. It's a huge eye-opener for someone like me, who for his whole life has generally avoided competitive painting. The thing is that whilst managing your expectations really matters when you enter competitions, you can't really have expectations unless you first give it a go. So just remember to keep those models clean and paint them as if you want to win, and I think you'll be surprised at just how well you do. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up so that YouTube knows you like it and hopefully shows it to more people. If you want to see more videos like this, consider a subscription to the channel. It doesn't cost you anything, and again, it really helps us. Until next time, I think I am off now to stare judgingly at my own miniatures. Thanks for watching, folks. I'll see you in the next one, and bye for now.